Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Aquarius rising, also known as the Ascendant. And the rising sign is that image that we project onto others that we don't know very well. After you get to know someone, you see the depths of their personality that are not always readily apparent when you first meet them. And this is kind of what I'm getting at. If the sun sign and the rising sign are in harmonious elements, for instance. So in this case, if your sun sign is in Gemini and you have Aquarius rising, they're both air signs, there's going to be that forms a trine, and there's a sense of consistency between what your core values are, what your aspirations are, and how you express yourself. So there's no conflict there, and you will tend to be more of what you see is what you get. However, if there's like a wild difference, if your sun sign is Cancer and your rising sign is Aquarius, it's going to be very confusing for other people to get a grasp on who you really are, because Aquarius is far out. It's like visionary. It's very in the future and also nonconformist. Cancer is a traditional sign. It is associated with domestic life and, home and family. It rules that house in the astrological chart. And so it's like, it couldn't be more different. And yet, that is a part of you that needs to be integrated. I feel that the rising sign is indicative of the influence from your family of origin and how you needed to adapt to be a part of that. If your sun sign, again, is in like Gemini or Libra or Sagittarius, there was no need to adapt. So there's no conflict there. But in the case, as I mentioned, of Cancer, you may have been raised by people, maybe they were in academia or something along those lines, where they were in their heads and they raised you to be very detached, but you're not. You're a Cancer. So it may have been very difficult for you to feel nurtured growing up. Or maybe your sun sign is Scorpio. There's going to be that disconnect. And as a result, you may be conditioned by them to behave in that manner, but it's really not how you feel deep down inside. So it can show up as these coping mechanisms, and yet it doesn't work for you as an adult. And I mentioned the first Saturn return because I had read that after the age of 30, the influence of the rising sign dissipates. And I said that must be somehow connected to that, because that's when the first Saturn return occurs and you really start to feel like an adult. And to me, part of the whole idea of feeling like an adult is feeling like you have your own mind and your own influence, that the family, their demands upon you or their conditioning of you is no longer front and center in your life. And so depending upon, again, how the sun sign differs from the rising sign, it may show how much of that re-education is needed. Aquarius is a sign that you could call a contrarian. So with the rising sign, whatever people want to put on you, and this could include your family, you could be a rebel without a cause, where if they're conservative, you're the one with the pink hair and the nose ring. If they're liberal, you're the, in the tie and you become a conservative, as a kind of like a way of not being part of that group. That's kind of very interesting thing about Aquarius. It rules groups, the 11th house, you rule the collective, and yet you don't want to be a part of that collective. You want to stand apart. And a lot of times when we're looking at the rising sign, this will be in the form of outlandish dress. And obviously, it will differ from person to person. Not every Aquarius rising is going to have tattoos, although nowadays not having a tattoo is outlandish, right? Because most people have them. So eventually, when everybody does something, you're going to be the one person who says, I'll never get a tattoo. I'll never do this, I'll never do that, because you don't want to fit into their thing. And I always go back to the idea of, or the example of Janis Joplin, because Janis Joplin had Aquarius rising, and she is one of those iconic figures. Whether you like her music or you don't, that image is what people remember. And, the feathers, the tie-dye, the crazy costumes. And actually, Janis Joplin was a Capricorn sun and a Cancer moon. Now, her sun sign was very close to Aquarius, so she would have a little bit of that with her sun sign, but she really was, I've read several biographies of hers, and she really did have a kind of an old-fashioned part of her. And again, the rising sign is what gets all of the noise, the attention. And I was thinking about this concept of mine regarding the Saturn return, and she was 27 when she passed away, just like Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix. And I mean, maybe back in the late 60s or early 70s, being 27 seemed a lot older, but nowadays it seems like you're just a kid still when you're 27, to me at least. And to think that that was the extent of her life is just very touching, but it just shows that who knows what she would have grown into had she lived. She might have grown into that Capricorn individual and not needed to hide behind this outlandish appearance as much, because again, the rising sign isn't really your core personality the way your sun sign is. And so depending on how widely disparate it is, it might indicate that somebody is putting on a false front. And if you cannot integrate that part of you into the rest of your personality, it may always kind of plague you in terms of not feeling, not only that you don't understand yourself, but that you're like all over the place, that you don't really have a cohesive sense of self. And so I really feel that it's important for people to really honor all parts of themselves, I guess I would say. But not overly identify with the rising sign either, because that is something that was likely put into you by your family of origin, and it really might not serve you now. So what I would say in terms of the personality that other people may see of you is sometimes erratic. Your ruler, being the ruler of your rising sign, is Uranus. So if you know what your natal chart is, look to see where Uranus is, what house it's in, and what is very important to you in life. Uranus is all about being revolutionary, about being, breaking down the status quo. And so the average Aquarius rising, no matter what your sun sign is, you're going to have this part of you that is considered radical. And so even if your sun sign is Capricorn or Taurus, you may have politics that are very out of the norm of what most people have, or you may take more of an interest in politics, social, current events, sociological issues. So what would they call those? Well, they call them social issues. So all of these things are going on. You may be front and center on them. You may even have a career in those areas, social work, and maybe if you were a lawyer, you would be for, maybe a public defender and things like that. It's something that is a part of you, and it may have been ingrained in you as a child that you have to treat other people in an egalitarian sort of way. Everybody is equal. And you may have even been raised in a socialist or communist environment where literally everybody did get the same. But the interesting thing about that is you may eventually rebel against those beliefs and think differently. I believe Ayn Rand was an Aquarian. And it's so, I think, even though she talks a lot about money, I'm going to pause this. I want to see if I'm right about this. Yes, I am right about that. And she was born in Russia, so she came from family that was affluent, and they suffered after the Russian Revolution. So she never forgot that, and she developed a philosophical system called objectivism, and I can't remember exactly what it is. I probably, looking on Wikipedia here. Let me see. But, I'm going off into a tangent, aren't I? The point is that even people who are Aquarian or Aquarian rising can also embrace capitalism with a lot of gusto. And that's where I was going with that, because I was starting to talk about socialism, communism, and then I thought of Ayn Rand. And again, that sort of contrarian or eccentric point of view, kind of deviating from the norm, and also being hard to pigeonhole. I think that's true for Aquarius rising as well, is that people may think that they have you figured out, and then you surprise them again. And you may be like lanky, very skinny and tall physically. I know this is going to sound weird, but I would even wager that a lot of you kind of look like starseeds, if you know what that term means, where you may have alien components. I have Venus in Aquarius, so I can get out there once in a while myself. But seriously, actually, a lot of Aquarians, I think, are interested in astronomy, or they can be astrologers. Aquarius is a very intuitive sign, even though it's an air sign, and you can have flashes of insight. And being on the Ascendant, this can be, I think can be a component of your personality where you're interested in kind of far out things, and you also give the appearance, maybe your eyes are kind of like in the ozone. And because you're a visionary, you're an inventor, you're somebody who has a lot of mental activity going on. So anyway, I'll leave that there, Aquarius rising. I hope you enjoyed this. And I do have natal chart interpretations where I do this sort of analysis on your natal chart. And also I am looking at the year ahead. And this is an on-demand reading, so it can be any 12 months in succession, and seeing what's coming up for you, some highlights in different areas. So check out my website below this video. It's rainandmoonastrology.com. Take care. Bye.